The blood-orange sun dipped below the canyon's jagged rim as Maribel Taylor clutched her throbbing arm, tears streaming down her dust-caked face. Her so-called prospecting partners had abandoned her after the accident, taking her horse supplies and any hope of survival with them. The Nevada desert would show no mercy once darkness fell. Maribel had come west in 1876 with dreams as vast as the frontier itself. At 22, she'd left behind a comfortable Boston life to seek independence and adventure in the Nevada silver boom. Now, 6 months later, she faced death alone in a desolate canyon, miles from Belmont. As the shadows lengthened, she struggled to her feet, wincing as her broken arm shifted unnaturally beneath her torn sleeve. The sound of hoofbeats echoed against the canyon walls. Maribel froze, uncertain whether to hope for rescue or fear more danger. A lone rider appeared around the bend, his silhouette backlit by the dying sun. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace, approaching her with measured steps. "Madam, you look to be in a bad way," he said, his voice low and steady as he knelt beside her. His face, partially shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat, revealed concerned eyes that assessed her injury with a practiced gaze. "They left me," she managed through clenched teeth. "My arm, I see it." He gently examined her arm, his touch surprisingly delicate for hands so weathered. "Name's Finn Vallejo. Got a ranch about 15 miles northeast of here. I can help if you'll let me." Maribel hesitated only briefly before nodding. What choice did she have? Finn removed his bandana and fashioned a makeshift sling. "This'll hurt something fierce, but it needs setting before we move you." He worked methodically, explaining each step. When he finally aligned the broken bone, Maribel couldn't suppress her scream. The pain was blinding, stealing her breath and momentarily darkening her vision. "You did well," Finn said, securing the sling. His eyes met hers, a mixture of admiration and sympathy in their depths. "I'll carry you." Before she could protest, he lifted her with remarkable gentleness, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing. "My horse Samson's steady as they come. We'll get you to my place, then fetch the doctor from Belmont tomorrow." As he placed her carefully atop his horse and mounted behind her, Maribel felt the solid warmth of his chest against her back. His arms encircled her to hold the reins, creating a protective cocoon that, despite her pain and fear, made her feel safer than she had in months. "Thank you," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "Just hold on, Miss Taylor, Maribel Taylor, Miss Taylor. Come morning, things'll look brighter, I promise you that." As they rode through the gathering darkness, Maribel couldn't know that Finn Vallejo kept his promises, or that this chance meeting in a desolate canyon would forever alter the course of both their lives. Finn's ranch appeared as they crested a rise, a modest homestead nestled against the foothills. A 2-story cabin with a generous porch stood sentinel over a small barn, corral, and several outbuildings. In the moonlight, it looked like a haven to Maribel's exhausted eyes. "Almost there," Finn said, his breath warm against her ear. She drifted in and out of consciousness during the journey, her head sometimes falling back against his shoulder. Each time, he'd adjusted his hold to better support her, never complaining about the added difficulty of managing both her and his horse through the rough terrain. An older man emerged from the house as they approached, lantern held high. "Hank," Finn called out, "got a patient for you." The man hurried forward. "Saints alive, who have you got there?" Miss Maribel Taylor found her abandoned in Canyon Creek with a broken arm. "Miss Taylor, this is Hank Simmons, my foreman and the closest thing to a doctor we've got until morning." Hank helped Finn dismount with Maribel still in his arms. "Bring her in. Emma's still up, she can help. Inside, the cabin was simply furnished but clean and warm. A middle-aged woman with gray, streaked hair rushed forward when they entered. Good heavens! "Put her here," she directed, clearing space on a sofa near the fireplace. "Emma, this is Miss Taylor," Finn explained as he set Maribel down with extreme care. "She needs tending." "I set the break already," he continued, "but she needs proper bandaging and something for the pain." Emma nodded briskly. "I'll fetch my kit." Hank put the kettle on, the poor girl's white as a sheet. As the couple bustled about, Finn knelt beside Maribel. "Emma and Hank have been with me since I started this place 5 years back. Emma's patched up more injuries than most army surgeons." His reassuring smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You're in good hands." "Why are you helping me?" Maribel asked, her voice barely audible. Something flickered across Finn's face, surprise, perhaps, or sadness. "Out here we help our own. No one survives the frontier alone." He stood as Emma returned. "I'll ride for the doctor at first light." Emma shooed him away. "Go get cleaned up. I'll see to Miss Taylor." Over the next hour, Emma rewrapped Maribel's arm with proper splints, helped her wash, and provided a nightgown. The older woman's efficient care was accompanied by gentle questions about how Maribel had come to be abandoned in the canyon. "They were prospectors," Maribel explained, sipping the laudanum-laced tea Emma had prepared. "Howard Deeks and his cousin Earl. I invested my savings for a share in their claim." She laughed bitterly. "There probably never was a claim." "And the broken arm," Emma prompted, her expression grave. "I confronted Howard about inconsistencies in his stories. He didn't take kindly to my questions." Maribel's voice faltered. "There was a struggle near the edge of a drop. I fell. When I came to, they were gone with everything." Emma's face hardened. "Finn will want to hear this. Those men can't be allowed to roam free doing such things." "I have nothing left," Maribel whispered. "No money, no horse, no prospects." "You have your life, child," Emma said firmly. "And for tonight, you have shelter. Tomorrow's troubles will wait for tomorrow." Later, settled in a small but comfortable bedroom, Maribel drifted toward sleep. Through her partially open door, she heard Finn's and Hank's low voices in conversation. The laudanum dulled her pain, but her mind remained clear enough to hear Finn say, "I'll speak to Sheriff Wilson after I fetch Doc Parker. Men like that don't deserve to walk free." His vehemence on behalf of a stranger touched something in Maribel's heart. As consciousness slipped away, her last thought was wondering what kind of man would ride 15 miles in the dark to save someone he'd never met. Morning brought clarity along with pain. Maribel woke to sunlight streaming through chintz curtains and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, disorientation gripped her, then memory flooded back along with the throbbing in her arm. A soft knock preceded Emma's entrance. "Good morning, dear. How are you feeling?" "Sore, but better. Thank you for everything." "No need for thanks. Finn's already ridden for the doctor. They should be back by midday." Emma helped Maribel into a simple day dress, adapted to accommodate her splinted arm. "Come have some breakfast. You need your strength." In the kitchen, Hank nodded respectfully from his place at the table. "Morning, Miss Taylor. Please call me Maribel." "Only if you call me Hank." His weathered face creased in a smile. "Finn says you're from back east." Over breakfast, Maribel shared her story, her privileged upbringing in Boston, her father's death that left her with a modest inheritance but no desire to follow the expected path of advantageous marriage, her journey west seeking independence. "I thought the silver mines might offer investment opportunities," she explained. "I met Howard Deeks in Belmont. He was persuasive." Hank and Emma exchanged glances. "Folks come west for all sorts of reasons," Hank said diplomatically. "Some running from something, some running to something." "Which was Finn?" Maribel asked before she could stop herself. Another exchanged glance. "That's his story to tell," Emma said gently, "but I will say he understands what it means to start over." After breakfast, Emma showed Maribel around the homestead. Despite her pain and uncertain circumstances, Maribel found herself impressed by the operation Finn had built. The small ranch ran efficiently, with a modest herd of cattle, several fine horses, and productive gardens. "Finn came here with nothing but his horse and saddle," Emma explained as they paused by the corral. "Built everything you see with his own hands or with help he earned honestly. He seems different from other men I've met out west." Emma smiled knowingly. "That he is. Educated, too, though he doesn't make a show of it." Before Maribel could inquire further, hoofbeats announced riders approaching. Finn rode in alongside an older gentleman with a medical bag. "Miss Taylor," Finn called, dismounting smoothly. "This is Dr. Parker from Belmont. He's going to have a proper look at that arm." The examination was thorough and painful, but ultimately reassuring. "You've done a fine job setting this, Vallejo," the doctor pronounced. "Clean break, aligned well. 6 weeks in a proper cast, and she should heal nicely." While the doctor prepared materials for the cast, Finn explained, "I've spoken with Sheriff Wilson about Deeks and his cousin. He knows them small-time swindlers who have been working the area. He's sending deputies to look for them." "Thank you," Maribel said, meeting his eyes directly. In daylight, she could finally see them clearly, a striking hazel that shifted between green and gold. "But I have no way to repay you or the doctor. Doc's an old friend," Finn dismissed. "As for staying here while you heal, I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition. We've got the room, and you need time to recover and figure out your next steps." His gaze was steady. "Unless you've got somewhere else to go." Maribel fell silent. The truth was, she had nowhere. Her money was gone. Her few friends in Belmont were really just acquaintances, and Boston held nothing but memories of a life she'd deliberately left behind. "That's settled then," Finn said, interpreting her silence correctly. "You'll stay until you're healed at least, Doctor." Parker finished applying the cast with Emma's assistance. "I'll return in 2 weeks to check progress," he told Maribel. "Meanwhile, rest that arm and try not to exert yourself." After the doctor departed, with Finn's promise to send payment to his office in town, Maribel found herself alone with her rescuer for the first time since their journey from the canyon. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "Taking in a stranger, speaking to the sheriff, paying the doctor." "You don't know me." Finn considered her for a long moment. 6 years ago, I was robbed and left for dead in the Colorado mountains. A Ute family found me, tended my wounds, gave me shelter through the winter. They owed me nothing, but they saved my life." His expression softened. "I swore if I ever had the chance to repay that kindness to another soul in need, I would." The simple honesty in his voice moved Maribel deeply. "I'm grateful," she said, "truly. And I won't take advantage of your generosity. Once I'm able, I'll earn my keep." A small smile played at his lips. "I don't doubt it, Miss Taylor. You don't strike me as someone who gives up easily." "Maribel," she corrected. "If I'm to stay here, please call me Maribel." "Maribel," he repeated, her name sounding different in his voice. "Welcome to Vallejo Ranch. For however long you need it, consider it home." The days that followed established a rhythm that surprised Maribel with its comfort. Each morning, she woke to the sounds of the ranch coming to life. Hank and the 2 ranch hands, Miguel and Thomas, preparing for the day's work. Emma in the kitchen. Finn's deep voice issuing instructions before heading out to tend the cattle or mend fences. Despite her injury, Maribel insisted on contributing. She helped Emma with cooking and mending, tasks she could manage one-handed. In the afternoons, when the house grew quiet, she often sat on the porch, watching the distant figures working the land, the mountains standing sentinel on the horizon. Evenings brought everyone together around the long table in the main room. The conversations flowed easily, stories exchanged, laughter shared. Finn, reserved at first, gradually revealed a dry wit and thoughtful intelligence that challenged her preconceptions of frontier ranchers. A week into her stay, Maribel found Finn alone in what he called his study, a small room lined with bookshelves that had surprised her when Emma first showed her around the house. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said from the doorway. Finn looked up from the ledger he'd been reviewing. "Not at all. Come in." Maribel approached the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines with her good hand. Shakespeare, Thoreau, Whitman, along with practical volumes on animal husbandry, botany, and law. "You've built quite a library for such a remote location." "Books travel well," he replied, closing the ledger. "They've been good companions over the years." "Emma mentioned you were educated. Where did you study?" A shadow crossed his face briefly. "Princeton. Though that seems like another lifetime now." Maribel couldn't hide her surprise. "What brought you from Princeton to the Nevada wilderness?" Finn was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice held a careful neutrality. "The war changed many things. Afterward, I needed space to rebuild myself." He offered a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "What about you? You're obviously well educated yourself." "Tutors mostly, then Miss Porter's school for young ladies," she said. "My father believed in education, even for daughters, though he drew the line at college." "And yet you chose the frontier over Boston society." "I wanted to write my own story." Maribel moved to the window, gazing out at the land that had become increasingly familiar. After father died, the pressure to marry suitably became suffocating. "My mother didn't understand why I wouldn't simply accept Philip Wainwright's proposal and live the life she'd planned for me." "Philip Wainwright was a fool to let you escape," Finn said, his tone lightening. Maribel turned, surprised to find him standing closer than she'd realized. "Actually, I think he was relieved. The arrangement was more about combining family businesses than any genuine affection." Something in Finn's expression changed, a softening around his eyes. "Their loss is Nevada's gain, then." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities, until Emma's call for supper broke the spell. As they walked to the dining room together, Maribel was acutely aware of Finn's presence beside her, of how in just a week, this place and these people had begun to feel more like home than Boston had in years. 2 weeks after her arrival, Dr. Parker returned to check Maribel's progress. "Healing nicely," he pronounced after examining the arm. "Another 4 weeks in the cast should do it." "Thank you, doctor," Maribel said, "and thank you for coming all this way. It's no trouble. Gives me an excuse to catch up with Finn here." The doctor packed his bag and accepted the coffee Emma offered. "Any word on those swindlers who did this to you?" Finn, leaning against the doorframe, shook his head. "Sheriff Wilson sent word yesterday. His deputies tracked them to Carson City but lost the trail. Seems they've fled the territory." Maribel felt a curious mix of disappointment and relief. Justice would have been satisfying, but confronting Howard and Earl again was not something she relished. "Well, you're better off without that sort around," Dr. Parker said firmly. "Now, young lady, continue taking it easy with that arm. No heavy lifting or strenuous activity." After the doctor left, Finn found Maribel on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in fiery hues. "Are you disappointed?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her. "About Deke's getting away," she considered the question. "Yes, but not overwhelmingly so. They took my money and belongings, but—" She gestured at the landscape before them. "They inadvertently led me here. It's hard to remain bitter when I've been shown such kindness." Finn studied her profile in the fading light. "You're remarkable, you know that. Most people in your position would be consumed with thoughts of revenge or self-pity." "I've had my moments," she admitted with a small smile, "but dwelling on what's lost serves no purpose. I'd rather focus on what's ahead." "And what is ahead for you, Maribel Taylor?" His question was soft but direct. She turned to face him, struck again by the intensity in his hazel eyes. "Honestly, I don't know. My plans crumbled when my investment did, once my arm heals." She trailed off, realizing she'd been avoiding thinking too far ahead. "You're welcome to stay," Finn said, then hastily added, "until you figure things out, I mean." The note of uncertainty in his voice, so different from his usual confidence, warmed something inside her. "Thank you. I may take you up on that offer, at least for a little while. I've grown rather fond of this place." "It grows on you," he agreed, his gaze shifting back to the sunset. After a comfortable silence, he added, "I'm riding into Belmont tomorrow for supplies. Would you like to come along? Might do you good to get off the ranch for a bit." The invitation surprised and delighted her. "I'd love that. Good." He stood, hesitating briefly before adding, "It'll be a full day's journey there and back. We'll leave at first light." As Finn walked back into the house, Maribel remained on the porch, watching stars emerge in the deepening blue. For the first time since her accident, she felt a flutter of anticipation for what tomorrow might bring. The journey to Belmont took most of the morning. Finn had rigged a special saddle arrangement that allowed Maribel to ride comfortably, despite her cast, and the steady mare he'd chosen for her required minimal guidance. They rode side by side when the trail allowed, conversation flowing more easily away from the ranch. Finn pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his early days in the territory. Maribel found herself laughing more than she had in months. "How did you end up in Nevada specifically?" she asked as they crossed a stream, water sparkling in the midday sun. "After Princeton and the war, I mean." Finn was quiet for a moment. "I served with a man named Carlos Mendoza, Nevada native, always talking about the silver mountains and open skies of his homeland. When he died at Gettysburg, I promised I'd see it someday." His voice softened. "When I needed a fresh start after the war, his words came back to me. Did you find what you were looking for?" His eyes met hers. "I found something better. Peace." Belmont appeared on the horizon shortly after noon, a bustling mining town nestled in the foothills. As they rode down the main street, Maribel was struck by how much had changed in just 3 weeks. She'd arrived in this same town months ago, full of naive optimism. Now she saw it through different eyes. Finn handled his business efficiently, restocking supplies, arranging shipments, settling accounts. Maribel noticed how people treated him with genuine respect, a sharp contrast to the false deference often shown to those with money to spend. At the general store, while the owner tallied their purchases, Maribel wandered the aisles. A display of hair combs caught her eye, nothing fancy by Boston standards, but pretty nonetheless. "See something you like?" Finn appeared beside her. "Just looking," she said quickly, embarrassed to be caught admiring trinkets when she couldn't afford them. Finn studied the display. "The tortoiseshell would suit your hair," he observed casually, then returned to the counter to complete his transaction. Later, as they prepared to leave town, the store owner's son delivered a small package to Maribel. Inside, she found the tortoiseshell comb. "Finn, you shouldn't have. It's a small thing," he said, adjusting his saddle. "Consider it a welcome gift." "Thank you," she said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "It's beautiful." His smile was worth more than the gift itself. "Shall we head back? I'd like to reach the ranch before dark." The return journey felt different somehow. Maribel found herself hyper-aware of Finn's presence, the breadth of his shoulders, the confidence in his posture, the way the setting sun burnished his dark hair with gold. When their eyes met occasionally, something unspoken passed between them. As they approached the final stretch to the ranch, Finn suddenly reined his horse to a stop, gesturing for Maribel to do the same. He pointed to a ridge where a small herd of wild horses grazed in the golden evening light. "Mustangs," he whispered. "The black stallion leading them is one I've been watching for years. Never been able to get close." They sat in silence, watching the magnificent creatures until the stallion raised his head, catching their scent, and led his herd away in a thunder of hooves. "They're breathtaking," Maribel said softly. "Freedom incarnate," Finn agreed. As they resumed their journey, he added, "My father raised thoroughbreds in Virginia. Magnificent animals, but there's something about these wild ones that speaks to the soul." "You never talk about your family," Maribel observed. A shadow crossed his face. "Not much to tell. Parents gone, estate lost in the war. My brother died at Antietam." "I'm sorry," she said, understanding now some of the sadness she sometimes glimpsed in his eyes. "It was a lifetime ago," he said, his tone suggesting the topic was closed. "Come on, I promised Emma we'd be back for supper." They rode the rest of the way in companionable silence. As the ranch came into view, Maribel was surprised by the sense of homecoming she felt. 3 weeks ago, this place had been unknown to her. Now, it felt like somewhere she belonged. That night after dinner, Maribel sat before the small mirror in her room, drawing the new comb through her loose hair. The simple gift represented more than just Finn's generosity. It was an acknowledgement of her as a woman, not merely an injured guest requiring assistance. She traced the delicate pattern with her fingertips, remembering the way Finn had said it would suit her hair. Had he been watching her that closely? The thought sent a flush of warmth through her that had nothing to do with the summer evening. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She quickly plaited her hair and called, "Come in." Emma entered with a steaming cup. "Brought you some willow bark tea. Thought your arm might be aching after the ride today." "Thank you." Maribel accepted the cup gratefully. "How did you know?" "Been around enough broken bones to recognize the signs," Emma said, settling on the edge of the bed. Her eyes fell on the comb on the dressing table. "That's lovely." "Finn bought it in town today," Maribel admitted, a blush rising to her cheeks. Emma's expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes sparkled. "Did he now?" After a pause, she added, "He's changed since you've been here." "Smiles more." "Emma." Maribel hesitated. "Would you tell me more about him? I know it's not my place to ask, but you're developing feelings for him," Emma finished gently. Maribel couldn't deny it. "I barely know him." "Sometimes time doesn't matter when hearts recognize each other." Emma smoothed her apron. "What do you want to know? Why is a Princeton-educated man running a modest ranch in Nevada? What happened after the war that made him seek such isolation?" Emma sighed. "That's his story to tell. But I will say this: Finn Vallejo is the finest man I've known, besides my Hank. Whatever his past, he's faced it with honor." She stood, patting Maribel's good arm. "Drink your tea and get some rest, and Maribel, give him time. He's carried his burdens alone for a long while." After Emma left, Maribel sat by the window, sipping her tea and watching stars emerge above the mountains. Somewhere on the property, Finn was completing his evening rounds, checking livestock and securing buildings, establishing the routine that had built this place from nothing. She touched the comb again, a small token that somehow represented so much more. Whatever his secrets, whatever her uncertain future, Maribel knew with sudden clarity that Finn Vallejo had claimed a piece of her heart she might never reclaim. Spring turned to summer, marking a month since Maribel's arrival at Vallejo Ranch. Her arm healed steadily, and with it grew her integration into ranch life. What had begun as temporary shelter had evolved into something far more meaningful. Finn had begun teaching her to ride properly on her mare, Juniper. "You sit a horse well," he observed during one lesson, "but you've clearly only ridden side saddle before." "Proper Boston ladies don't straddle horses," Maribel replied with mock primness, making him laugh. These moments together riding the boundaries of his property, Finn pointing out landmarks and sharing his knowledge, became the highlights of her days. Sometimes their hands would brush as he adjusted her reins or helped her dismount, sending unexpected electricity through her. One particularly hot afternoon, they stopped by a small spring-fed pool for the horses to drink. Maribel, still awkward with her cast, lost her footing on the rocky bank and would have fallen if Finn hadn't caught her, his strong hand steadying her waist. "Careful," he murmured, his face suddenly very close to hers. Time seemed to suspend as they stood there, neither pulling away. Maribel could feel his breath on her cheek, see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes. For one breathless moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he gently set her upright and stepped back. "We should head back. Looks like rain coming." The disappointment was sharp and unexpected. As they rode home under darkening skies, Maribel wondered if she'd imagined the moment entirely. That evening, a summer thunderstorm rolled through the valley. After dinner, while Emma and Hank retired early, Maribel found herself alone with Finn on the covered porch, watching lightning illuminate the distant mountains. "I've always loved storms," she admitted, pulling her shawl tighter against the cooling air. "There's something elemental about them." Finn nodded, his profile strong in the intermittent flashes of light. "Nature reminding us of our place in the grand scheme." They sat in comfortable silence until Finn suddenly asked, "Do you miss Boston?" The question surprised her. "Sometimes," she answered honestly. "I miss certain conveniences, perhaps, cultural things, theaters, libraries." She paused. "But I don't miss feeling constrained by expectations, always performing the role of Maribel Taylor, dutiful daughter and potential society wife." "And what role do you play here?" His voice was soft, curious. She considered the question. "Just myself, I suppose, still discovering who that is." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face as he turned toward her. "I like who you're discovering." The simple statement, delivered without artifice, touched her deeply. "Earlier today, by the pool," she began, gathering courage. Finn tensed slightly. "I apologize if I overstepped." "You didn't," she said quickly. "I thought I wondered if you might." She faltered, unused to being so forward. "If I might kiss you," he finished for her, his voice dropping lower. Maribel nodded, her heart pounding. Finn moved his chair closer to hers. "I wanted to," he admitted. "But I questioned my right. You came here injured, dependent on my hospitality. I would never want you to feel obligated." "Is that what you think?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "That I'd feel compelled to respond to your interest out of gratitude?" He shrugged slightly. "It's a consideration." Maribel felt a flash of indignation, followed by understanding. "Your concern speaks well of you, Finn, but I assure you I'm quite capable of knowing my own mind." She met his gaze steadily. "And my heart." The tension between them shifted, electricity that had nothing to do with the storm crackling in the air. "Maribel," he began, his voice rough with emotion. Before he could continue, a tremendous crash of thunder directly overhead startled them both. Rain began pouring down in sheets, some of it blown onto the porch by gusting wind. The moment broken, they both stood to retreat inside. As they reached the door, Finn caught her hand. "This conversation isn't finished," he said, his eyes intense in the dim light. "I should hope not," she replied, summoning a confidence she didn't entirely feel. His smile was slow and promising. "Good night, Maribel." Good night, Finn. As she prepared for bed, listening to the storm rage outside, Maribel realized how profoundly her life had changed in just a month. She'd come west seeking independence and adventure, never imagining she would find herself falling in love with an enigmatic rancher who'd rescued her from certain death. Whatever tomorrow brought, she knew with certainty that her path had irrevocably merged with Finn Vallejo's, for better or worse. The following morning dawned clear and fresh, the storm having cleansed the air of summer dust. Maribel woke early, anticipation humming through her veins at the prospect of seeing Finn after their interrupted conversation, but breakfast brought disappointment. Finn rode out at dawn, Hank informed her. Flash flood in the north pasture, some cattle stranded on high ground. Will he be back soon? Maribel tried to keep her tone casual. Emma and Hank exchanged knowing glances. Hard to say, Hank replied. Depends on the damage. Might be late tonight, might be tomorrow. The day stretched interminably. Maribel helped Emma with household tasks, attempted to read, and even practiced writing with her left hand since her right remained encased in the cast. Nothing adequately distracted her from thoughts of Finn, and what might have happened had the storm not interrupted them. By evening, with still no sign of him, Maribel's anticipation had shifted to worry. Is it dangerous, what he's doing? She asked Emma as they prepared supper. Ranching is always dangerous, Emma replied matter-of-factly. But Finn knows what he's about. He won't take foolish risks. It was well after midnight when Maribel, unable to sleep, heard hoofbeats in the yard. Throwing a shawl over her nightgown, she moved to her window, watching as Finn dismounted wearily and led his exhausted horse to the barn. She debated going downstairs but hesitated, conscious of propriety. As she stood indecisively, Finn emerged from the barn and paused, looking up at the house. His gaze seemed to find her window unerringly. Maribel stepped back instinctively, then chided herself for cowardice and moved forward again. Finn was still looking up. After a moment, he raised his hand in a small gesture of acknowledgement. She returned the gesture, a silent communication that conveyed more than words could have. He nodded once, then turned toward the bunkhouse where the ranch hands slept, presumably to avoid disturbing the main house at such a late hour. Morning brought Finn to breakfast, looking tired but satisfied. Lost 2 head of cattle but saved 20 more, he reported as he accepted coffee from Emma. Miguel and Thomas are bringing them down today. His eyes met Maribel's across the table. How's the arm? Much better, she replied, conscious of Emma and Hank watching their interaction with poorly concealed interest. Dr. Parker is due to check it next week. Good. That's good. An awkward pause followed, unusual in their normally easy conversation. After breakfast, Hank announced he needed Finn's help repairing flood damage to the north fence line. Maribel hid her disappointment as Finn nodded and prepared to leave. At the door, however, he turned back. Maribel, would you ride out with me later, after the repairs are done? There's something I'd like to show you, her heart leapt. Yes, I'd like that. His smile was worth the wait. I'll come find you this afternoon. True to his word, Finn appeared around 3 o'clock, having changed into a fresh shirt, his hair still damp from washing. Ready for that ride? He asked, finding her helping Emma in the garden. Emma shooed her away with a knowing smile. Go on. These beans can wait. They rode north, away from the areas damaged by flooding, into higher foothills Maribel hadn't yet explored. Juniper followed Finn's stallion Samson, confidently, allowing Maribel to enjoy the spectacular scenery. Where are we going? She finally asked when they'd been riding for nearly an hour. Almost there, Finn replied mysteriously. They crested a ridge and Maribel gasped. Below them stretched a hidden valley, sheltered on three sides by rocky cliffs. A clear stream wound through meadows dotted with wildflowers, and at the far end a small cabin nestled against the mountainside. "What is this place?" she asked, enchanted. "My first home in Nevada," Finn said, guiding Samson down a narrow trail into the valley. "I built that cabin when I first arrived, lived here alone for 2 years before establishing the ranch. It's beautiful," Maribel breathed, following him down. "I still come here sometimes when I need solitude," he continued. "No one knows about it except Hank. The significance of him sharing this private retreat wasn't lost on her. Thank you for showing me." They dismounted by the cabin, tethering the horses where they could graze on lush grass. The cabin was small but solid, clearly built by skilled hands. Inside, it was Spartan but clean, a single room with a stone fireplace, narrow bed, table, and chair. "Not exactly luxurious," Finn said, watching her examine his former home. "It's perfect," she replied honestly. "A place entirely your own." They sat outside on a fallen log, the late afternoon sun bathing the valley in golden light. Birds called to each other across the meadow, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. "Why did you bring me here?" Maribel asked finally, though she thought she knew the answer. Finn was silent for a long moment. "Because I wanted you to know me," he said at last. "The real me, not just the rancher you've seen these past weeks." "And who is the real Finn Vallejo?" He took a deep breath. "Before I tell you that, there's something you should know about my time after the war." His expression grew serious. "I didn't just leave Virginia because the estate was lost. I left because I couldn't bear to stay." The story emerged slowly, painfully. Finn had returned from the war a different man, haunted by the things he'd seen and done, unable to slip back into his former life as the son of a prominent family. When his parents died of typhoid within months of each other, the already mortgaged estate went to creditors. "I was lost," he admitted. "Drinking too much, picking fights, dishonoring my family's name and my own service." He stared into the distance. "One night I nearly killed a man in a drunken brawl. That was my wake-up call. I left Virginia the next day with nothing but shame and the desperate need to become someone different." Maribel listened without interrupting, understanding now the shadows that sometimes darkened his eyes. "I drifted west, working when I needed money, moving on before I could form attachments. Then came that winter in Colorado when I was robbed and left for dead. The Ute family who saved me. They taught me more than just how to survive. They taught me how to live again with purpose and honor." He turned to face her directly. "This valley was my fresh start. Everything I've built since the ranch, the relationships with Hank and Emma and the others, it's all been my attempt to become worthy of the second chance I was given." "You've succeeded," Maribel said softly. "The man you are now is extraordinary, Finn. I wanted you to know everything before." He hesitated. "Before I presume to tell you how I've come to feel about you," her heart quickened. "And how is that?" "From the moment I found you in that canyon, something changed in me," he said, his voice low and earnest. "At first I told myself it was just protectiveness or perhaps loneliness, but these weeks with you have shown me it's far more than that." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining carefully to avoid jostling her cast. "I'm falling in love with you, Maribel Taylor, deeply and completely." The words, so plainly spoken, brought tears to her eyes. "I never expected this," she whispered. "When I came west, I was seeking independence, adventure, not love." Finn's expression faltered slightly. "I understand if you don't know," she interrupted, squeezing his hand. "I meant that love found me when I wasn't looking, and I'm grateful for that." She met his gaze steadily. "I'm falling in love with you too, Finn. Perhaps I've been falling since you carried me from that canyon. The tension in his face melted into wonder. Truly. In answer, Maribel leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as Finn's arm encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally parted, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his. "Does that answer your question?" she murmured. His laugh was soft and joyous. "Quite thoroughly." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I want you to stay, Maribel, not as a guest, not out of obligation or circumstance, but because you choose to, because we choose each other." "Are you proposing, Mr. Vallejo?" she teased gently. "Not yet," he replied, his expression growing serious again. "When I do, it will be proper, with a ring and all the respect you deserve. But I am asking for your permission to court you openly, with honorable intentions." The formal request, so unexpected in this wild setting yet so perfectly in character for Finn, touched Maribel deeply. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to courting, and yes to staying at least until we both decide what comes next." They remained in the valley, until sunset painted the cliffs in fiery oranges and reds, talking of their pasts, their present, and cautiously, their future. When they finally rode back to the ranch under a canopy of stars, something fundamental had shifted between them, a commitment made, a path chosen together. Emma took one look at their faces when they returned and smiled knowingly. "About time," she murmured, as she bustled about preparing a late supper. "About time indeed." The following weeks brought significant changes to life at Vallejo Ranch. 2 days after their journey to the Hidden Valley, Dr. Parker removed Maribel's cast, pronouncing her arm healed though still requiring gentle treatment. "Full strength will return gradually," he advised. "Don't overtax it." Freedom from the cast allowed Maribel greater participation in ranch life. Under Finn's patient tutelage, she improved her riding skills dramatically. Emma taught her the basics of Western cooking, laughing at Maribel's initial disasters with biscuits and stews. "You Boston ladies aren't exactly raised for frontier kitchens," she teased. "Perhaps not," Maribel replied good-naturedly, "but we are taught to learn quickly." Her relationship with Finn flourished in the open. Their courtship, conducted under the approving eyes of the ranch household, followed a rhythm dictated by work and weather rather than social calendars. Some evenings found them reading aloud to each other from Finn's library. Other days, they rode the property boundaries together, Finn teaching Maribel about the land and its management. News of Sheriff Wilson's success in apprehending Howard Deeks arrived in late July. The swindler had been caught in Sacramento, attempting a similar scheme on another unsuspecting investor. "They're sending him back to Nevada for trial," Finn informed Maribel after receiving the sheriff's letter. "Would you be willing to testify?" The prospect of facing Deeks again was unsettling, but Maribel nodded firmly. "If it prevents him from harming others, absolutely." Finn's pride in her courage was evident. "I'll accompany you to Carson City when the time comes." August brought scorching heat that limited outdoor work to early mornings and evenings. One particularly stifling afternoon, Maribel was helping Emma preserve peaches from the small orchard when Finn appeared at the kitchen door, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Would you join me for a ride at sunset?" he asked Maribel. "Once it cools down a bit." Emma intercepted the look that passed between them. "Go on," she said, shooing Maribel away from the preserving kettle. "These peaches will keep till tomorrow." As the relentless sun finally dipped toward the western mountains, Maribel met Finn by the corral, where Juniper and Samson stood saddled and waiting. They rode in companionable silence toward the eastern foothills, where a particular overlook provided spectacular views of the ranch and surrounding valley. Upon reaching their destination, Finn helped Maribel dismount, his hands lingering at her waist. "Beautiful evening," she observed, noticing how the setting sun gilded everything with warm light. "Perfect evening," Finn agreed, though his attention was entirely on her rather than the view. He took her hands in his expression suddenly serious. "Maribel, these past months have been the happiest of my life." Her heart began to race. "Mine too. When I found you in that canyon, I thought I was saving you," he continued. "But in truth, you've saved me as well from loneliness, from a life half lived." He released her hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet pouch. "I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment." From the pouch, he produced a ring, a delicate gold band set with a modest but perfect diamond flanked by 2 small sapphires. "It was my grandmother's," he explained softly. "The only family heirloom I kept when I left Virginia." Maribel's eyes filled with tears as Finn dropped to one knee before her, the setting sun casting his profile in sharp relief against the painted sky. "Maribel Taylor, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Though she had suspected his intention for this evening, the reality of the moment, this proud, complex man kneeling before her, offering his heart and his future, overwhelmed her. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Finn waited, patient but vulnerable. Finally, she found her voice. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly. "Yes, Finn Vallejo, I would be honored to be your wife." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the last golden rays of sunlight as he rose to his feet and gathered her into his arms. Their kiss was deep and filled with promise, not just of passion, but of partnership, of a shared life built on mutual respect and genuine love. When they finally parted, Maribel laughed softly, joy bubbling up irrepressibly. "What?" Finn asked, smiling down at her. "I was just thinking. If Howard Deeks hadn't left me for dead in that canyon, I'd never have found you. It seems fate works in mysterious ways." "Fate, and a very determined Boston lady who refused to give up," Finn replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "When do you want to be married?" "Soon," she said decisively. "I don't need a grand wedding, just us and the people who have become my family here." His eyes softened at her words. "Family, I like the sound of that." They lingered on the overlook until stars began appearing in the deepening blue, making plans for their future together. By the time they rode back to the ranch, the moon had risen, casting silver light across the land that would now truly be their shared home. The news of their engagement was met with delighted but unsurprised reactions from the ranch household. Emma hugged them both, tears in her eyes. "I knew from the moment you two first sat at my table together," she declared. "Some things are just meant to be." Hank clapped Finn on the shoulder. "About time you found yourself a worthy partner," he said gruffly, then surprised Maribel by enfolding her in a brief, awkward embrace. "Welcome to the family officially." Even Miguel and Thomas offered congratulations, though Thomas couldn't resist adding, "Boss has been like a bear with a thorn these past 2 weeks, carrying that ring around and waiting for the perfect moment." Maribel glanced at Finn, who looked slightly embarrassed by this revelation. 2 whole weeks, she teased. "You should have asked sooner. My answer would have been the same." "I wanted everything to be right," he admitted. "You deserve perfection." "I have it," she replied softly, squeezing his hand. They decided on a September wedding, to be held at the ranch with a small gathering of friends and neighbors. Maribel wrote to her mother in Boston. Their correspondence had been sporadic since her departure, informing her of the engagement. She harbored few illusions about her mother making the journey west for the ceremony, but felt the obligation to extend the invitation nonetheless. Preparations for the wedding coincided with the ranch's busiest season. Finn and his men worked from dawn to dusk, bringing in the hay harvest and preparing livestock for the coming winter. Maribel divided her time between helping Emma with household management and learning the business side of ranching from Finn. "You have a good head for figures," he remarked one evening as they reviewed the ledgers together. "Better than mine, truth be told." "My father insisted I understand business matters," Maribel explained. "He said even if I never managed my own affairs, I should be able to recognize if someone was mismanaging them for me." "Wise man," Finn said appreciatively. 2 weeks before the wedding, a letter arrived from Maribel's mother. The response was cool but not entirely dismissive. She would not attend the wedding, but sent a small package containing a pair of pearl earrings that had belonged to Maribel's grandmother. "She's making an effort in her way," Maribel told Finn as they sat on the porch that evening. "This is as close to a blessing as we're likely to get." Finn examined the elegant handwriting on the letter. "Perhaps someday we might visit Boston. Show her the man you chose isn't quite the uncultured frontier ruffian she imagines." Maribel smiled at the thought. "Perhaps. Though I rather like my uncultured frontier ruffian just as he is." The week before the wedding brought an unexpected visitor. Maribel was helping Emma arrange flowers cut from the garden when hoofbeats announced a rider approaching. Through the window, she saw a well-dressed gentleman dismounting from a handsome bay horse. Finn, returning from the fields, intercepted the stranger in the yard. Their conversation appeared cordial, if somewhat reserved on Finn's part. After several minutes, they walked together toward the house. "Maribel," Finn called as they entered, "there's someone here to see you." The visitor removed his hat, revealing distinguished features and gray-streaked dark hair. "Miss Taylor," he said with a formal bow. "Robert Wainwright at your service." "Mr. Wainwright?" Maribel was genuinely shocked. "Philip's father. What on earth brings you to Nevada?" "Business in Carson City," he explained. "When I heard from your mother that you were to be married, I thought I might extend congratulations in person, as I was in the territory." The explanation seemed plausible but incomplete. Maribel glanced at Finn, whose expression remained carefully neutral. "You're most welcome," she said, recovering her composure. "May I present my fiancé, Finn Vallejo?" The men exchanged another handshake. "Mr. Vallejo has been giving me a brief tour of your operation," Wainwright said. "Most impressive for such a young enterprise." Emma tactfully suggested refreshments, and soon they were seated in the parlor. The strange social tableau of Boston propriety meeting frontier practicality, creating an undercurrent of tension despite the cordial conversation. As Emma served coffee, Wainwright turned to Maribel. "I must confess, Miss Taylor, that while business brought me to Nevada, curiosity brought me to Belmont. Your departure caused quite a stir in certain Boston circles." "I imagine it did," Maribel replied evenly. "Though I wouldn't have expected it to interest Wainwright's shipping particularly." The older man smiled slightly. "Perhaps not the company, but certainly the family. Philip was disappointed when you declined his proposal." Finn's eyebrows rose at this revelation, but he remained silent, allowing Maribel to navigate the conversation. "With all due respect, Mr. Wainwright, I recall your son's primary emotion as relief," she said firmly. "We both knew the match was our parents' ambition, not our own." Wainwright nodded, conceding the point. "Fair enough. In any case, I wanted to see for myself what could draw Maribel Taylor away from Boston society." His gaze moved appreciatively around the comfortable but modest room, then to Finn. "I believe I understand now." The conversation shifted to safer topics: Nevada's growth, the silver industry, the challenges of ranching. Throughout, Maribel observed the subtle assessment taking place as Wainwright gauged Finn's character and circumstances. When the visitor finally took his leave, promising to send a wedding gift from Carson City, Finn walked him to his horse. Maribel watched through the window as the men spoke privately for several minutes before shaking hands with what appeared to be genuine respect. "What did he say to you?" she asked when Finn returned. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "He said I'd won a prize greater than Nevada silver and I'd better treasure it accordingly." "And what did you reply?" "That I already knew that." Finn drew her into his arms. "Though I'm curious why you never mentioned being courted by the heir to Wainwright's shipping. That's quite the prosperous match you declined." Maribel shrugged. "It hardly seemed relevant. Philip and I were friends from childhood, but there was never any genuine affection beyond that. Our parents saw a beneficial business merger. We saw a lifetime of polite tolerance." "Well, I'm grateful for your good sense," Finn murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Though I wonder what old Wainwright would say if he knew you're marrying a man whose idea of a grand honeymoon is a cabin in a hidden valley." "He'd be scandalized," Maribel laughed. "And I'd be delighted." Their wedding day dawned clear and bright, the September air crisp with the promise of autumn. In keeping with their wishes for simplicity, they'd arranged a small ceremony to be performed by a traveling minister who served the scattered ranches and mining communities of the region. Emma had transformed the ranch house with wildflowers and ribbons, and neighbors from miles around gathered in the yard, bringing food and good wishes. Even Sheriff Wilson made the journey from Belmont, bringing news that Howard Deeks had been sentenced to 5 years in the territorial prison. "Justice served," he told Maribel, "and I'd say you came out ahead in the bargain." He nodded approvingly toward Finn, who was greeting guests nearby. In the small bedroom that would soon no longer be hers alone, Maribel prepared with Emma's help. Her wedding dress was simple cream-colored silk ordered from Carson City, adorned with lace at the collar and cuffs. Her grandmother's pearl earrings complemented the outfit, along with a wreath of small white flowers for her hair. "You look beautiful," Emma said, blinking back tears as she stepped back to survey her handiwork. "Absolutely beautiful." A knock at the door revealed Hank, uncharacteristically formal in his best shirt and polished boots. "Minister's ready," he announced. "And Finn's about to wear a hole in the porch floorboards with his pacing." Maribel laughed, sudden butterflies fluttering in her stomach. "Will you walk me out, Hank? I have no father to give me away, and you've been so kind." The gruff foreman's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with emotion. "Be my honor, Miss Maribel." The ceremony itself was brief but deeply meaningful. Standing before their assembled friends and neighbors, with Hank proudly escorting her to Finn's side, Maribel felt a sense of rightness that transcended the unconventional circumstances of their meeting and courtship. Finn's eyes never left hers as they exchanged vows. When he slipped the gold band to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, but his voice betrayed his emotion. "With this ring, I thee wed." The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and their first kiss as a married couple was met with cheers and applause from their guests. As they turned to face the gathering, Maribel caught Emma wiping away tears while Hank stood awkwardly patting her shoulder. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music provided by a neighbor's fiddle and another's harmonica. Finn and Maribel danced under lantern light as stars appeared overhead, their guests forming a circle around them. "Happy Mrs. Vallejo," Finn murmured as he held her close. "Perfectly," she replied, savoring the new name. "And you, husband?" His answer was in his kiss, tender and promising, before they were swept back into the festivities by well-wishers. Later, When the party finally wound down and guests departed for their distant homes, Finn led Maribel not to the main house, but toward two saddled horses waiting by the corral. "Where are we going?" she asked, though she already knew. "To our special place," he replied, helping her mount. "If that suits you." The ride to the hidden valley was magical in the moonlight. Upon reaching the cabin, Maribel discovered Finn had prepared it thoroughly for their arrival. Fresh linens on the expanded bed, wildflowers in a mason jar, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the small table. "When did you do all this?" she asked, touched by his thoughtfulness. "Yesterday, while you were busy with Emma," he admitted. "I wanted our first night as husband and wife to be perfect." "It already is," she said softly, stepping into his embrace. Their wedding night unfolded with tenderness and passion, the small cabin bearing witness to promises fulfilled and new ones made in whispers and touches. As they lay entwined in the quiet aftermath, moonlight streaming through the single window, Maribel traced the contours of Finn's face with gentle fingers. "What are you thinking?" he asked, capturing her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "That life takes unexpected turns," she replied. "6 months ago, I was in Boston, preparing to travel west in search of independence and adventure. I never imagined finding love in a Nevada canyon. 6 months ago, I was right here, convinced my future was set running the ranch, growing old with only memories for company." His arms tightened around her. "Then I found a stubborn Boston lady with a broken arm and everything changed. For the better," she teased, though she knew the answer. "Beyond my wildest dreams," he assured her, sealing the declaration with a kiss that promised many more such nights to come. They remained at the cabin for 3 days of secluded honeymoon before returning to the ranch and the responsibilities awaiting them. Life settled into a new rhythm still dictated by seasons and livestock and weather, but now enriched by their deepening partnership. Fall brought cattle sales and preparations for winter. Maribel proved herself adept at ranch management, freeing Finn to focus on expansion plans they developed together. By the time the first snow dusted the mountains in November, they'd acquired additional grazing land and negotiated favorable contracts with cattle buyers in Carson City. "You're a natural businesswoman," Finn remarked one evening as they reviewed their growing ledgers. "Your father taught you well." "He'd be pleased to see his lessons put to use," Maribel replied, though perhaps surprised at the context. Winter brought cozy evenings by the fire, reading and planning for the future. Christmas was celebrated with homemade gifts, and a feast that brought neighboring ranchers through snow-covered trails to share in the warmth of the Vallejo home. As spring approached, Maribel confirmed what she'd suspected for several weeks: she was expecting their first child. Finn's reaction to the news was everything she could have hoped for. Joy, wonder, and fierce protectiveness all crossed his face before he gathered her into a careful embrace. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby." Emma and Hank received the news with delighted excitement. Emma immediately began planning nursery arrangements, while Hank gruffly announced his intention to build a proper cradle. "Been saving some maple wood," he explained. "Nothing too fancy, but solid." The months of Maribel's pregnancy passed in a blur of activity. Finn insisted on hiring additional help for the spring roundup, refusing to have her overtax herself despite her protests that pregnancy didn't render her helpless. "Humor me," he said, kissing her soundly after one such argument. "I nearly lost you once before I even knew you. Now that I have you both, I'm taking no chances." Their son, James Henry Vallejo, was born on a perfect October morning in 1877, with Emma serving as midwife and Finn pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door, until the baby's lusty cries announced his arrival. When Finn finally entered to find Maribel cradling their newborn, the expression on his face was one she would treasure forever, a mixture of awe, gratitude, and love so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "He's perfect," Finn whispered, carefully taking the tiny bundle into his arms. "Hello, James. I'm your father." The baby's tiny hand wrapped around Finn's finger, and in that moment their family was complete. As autumn deepened around the Vallejo ranch, Maribel often thought about the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this life. Standing on the porch with James in her arms and Finn's arm around her waist, watching the sunset paint the mountains in the same colors she'd seen the day a stranger found her broken and abandoned in a canyon, she felt a gratitude beyond words. "What are you thinking about?" Finn asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "About how sometimes the worst moments lead to the best ones," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "About how being left for dead in a canyon led me to the most alive I've ever felt." Finn's arms tightened around them both. "I found a treasure in that canyon," he murmured, "and I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of it." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Maribel Taylor Vallejo, once a proper Boston lady seeking adventure, now a rancher's wife and mother, knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home, not in a place, but in the arms of the man who had once said simply, "I'll carry you." And he had, out of the canyon, into his heart, and through a life more rich and meaningful than either could have imagined on that fateful day when their paths first crossed in the wild Nevada wilderness.